A very warm welcome to everyone watching this live to this special conversation in celebration of Women's Equality Day. Today, we are here to explore a topic that is not only close to our heart but essential to the future of gender equality: the role of education and life skills in empowering women and creating a lasting impact for future generations. My name is Disha, Communications Manager at Empower India, and also the moderator for the day. And I am honored to be joined by two incredible leaders who have dedicated their lives to this cause. Please welcome Smita Bharti, Executive Director and President of Sakshi, and Program Director of the Rakshan Project. And with us is Anamara Beg, CEO of empowHER India. Together, these two wonderful, beautiful ladies bring a wealth of experience and insight into empowering women, not only for their personal advancement, but also for the overall progress of society and how life skills, education can be a powerful tool for achieving and sustaining women's equality. Today, we'll be discussing the progress made in women's equality and the challenges that remains. How education can be a transformative force in the lives of these women and girls, particularly in the rural and underprivileged communities, and how it creates a ripple effect for future generations. So, without any further ado, let's dive into this important conversation. And to start off the conversation, first of all, I welcome both of you to the panel and thank you so much for joining. So, to start off the conversation, I want to start with Smita Ji, with you. So, I ask you, what personal experience has driven you to become an advocate for women's equality and empowerment?
Thanks so much, Disha. I'm actually really thrilled to be here because um, how many platforms can we have to be able to talk about the discussion that we're going to have today? More the better, but it's still not enough. Um, Having said that, I get asked this question really often. And I like to say that I had about 30 years of experience and about 30 years of expertise that brings me to where I am today. Yeah. Um, for 30 years, I kind of have lived through the entire gamut of what we call gender-based violence and sexual violence, right? And then I spent a few years just trying to grapple with it and understand this is not how it was meant to be. Then what really went wrong and what really was happening in those years, which we just lived through with an absolute abject lack of information. So the next 30 years has been about working continuously, consistently, persistently to understand the drivers, the actors, the factors behind what really drives gender-based violence. What are the barriers to prevention? And what are the actions that one can take to actually create the world which we all deserve as citizens of this country?
That's wonderful. And Anamara, would you please share your?
Of course. Why women empowerment? Why get behind this cause? So, of course, my experience is not as much as Smita ji's. I mean, 30 years is a long time, but I have worked with women. My journey has been about 16 years in this space, and I've worked closely with women. I've worked closely with young girls and boys. And but honest, to be very honest, growing up, or when you talk about what led you to sort of get behind this cause, thankfully, growing up, I had a mom who was very empowered. I had a dad who was very proud of the fact that my mother was very empowered. So I thought that's how it is. And I wasn't really asking those kind of questions and I wasn't seeing too much. But then when I started working, that's when I started actually seeing the disparity around. So For my first job, I would go back and forth from Bandra to Churchgate, and I would see on my way back in the evenings, I would see women cutting vegetables in the train so that they can get home and cook. So they worked all day. They probably woke up in the morning, made their breakfast, lunch for their families, going back home and doing that again. I think that's when it started, like, really sinking in that how there is so much, like, women are burdened in such a unfair manner. And also I started thinking that there is a certain glorification which is attached to women being able to multitask, and I just saw that as such a trap. And once I saw that, I could not unsee that. I saw that in everything. Obviously, probably in lower income communities there's lack of education, so it's more pronounced, but I started seeing that in even around me. So I think that's where the seed was sown, and it just grew from there. And with this particular opportunity where I'm directly working with girls, I just feel like that's where I was meant to be in that sense. So yeah.
Brilliant.
Also,
Brilliant.
yeah.
Brilliant.
And that is correct. The journey begins with a question in your way, Smitaji, and in your thing, Anamara, it comes from the experience or the things that you see.
Yeah.
Why this? Why is it happening? Or what can we do? So amazing work. So next thing I would like to go on is, Smitaji, starting with you again. In your perspective, what does true women's equality look like in today's society? Like how have you seen, like, the understanding of women's equality change over the years, especially in the Indian context?
See, it's just not enough to talk about women's equality as such, because equality is dependent on equity. Okay, what is the equity that we are building, that we are making available? And that in itself is going to take us towards the equal, because when we're talking about equality, it's not about men and women being equal, right? Or men and women being treated as equal. There has to be a difference, because men and women are different. They have different struggles, they have different needs, they have different requirements, right? It's not as if only women are struggling. Historically, women are the subgroup which has been really marginalized and has been the bearer of the oppression and the suppression that we're talking about, which requires us to be talking about terms like women's equality and gender-based violence. But men also bear their burden. We're all trapped in a thought process, a mindset, which is making one subgroup work towards or behave in a superior manner over another, right? So if you're talking about women's equality, we need to be talking about equity. What kind of opportunities are available to them? Whether it is for work, whether it is for health, whether it is for resources, and then what kind of environments are available to them? Because even if they are able to move through a space and have a opportunity for work, is that work environment safe? Is the home safe? Is the public domain safe? So women's equality, if we talk about, is a very layered, I would say layered action. If you have to work towards women's equality, it is a very, very layered action. Yeah, just creating change in the policies or institutions is just not enough. What is really important is what kind of attitudinal and behavior change that we are bringing about. We need to be working on not only the infrastructural safety of women, we need to also be working on perception of safety where women are concerned. You may say, this street is so very well lit, but if in my perception it is an unsafe space, then I need to address that. What are the factors which are making it into an unsafe space? So women's equality can only come when I actually can live and realize my entire potential without fear, without having to keep looking over my shoulder to see what is this force which is going to pull me down or violate me. I mean, all of us have been really thrown off with yet again another incident that has happened in Calcutta. How long is this cycle going to continue? So when you say, what does women's equality look like in today's society? I would say what has happened in Calcutta is not possible, where Hathras is not possible, where Nirbhaya is not possible, where all those things that we don't hear about, countless assaults which we don't hear about, are not possible. Where care economy is not just just dependent on what the women are doing, but is equally distributed with men and women taking charge of it together, so that men and women can advance towards realizing their complete potential.
Yeah. I 100% agree with Smita ji, and unfortunately, obviously, I'm not backing this up with data, but it's just like perception again. It seems like over the last couple of years, violence against women seems to be on a rise again. The kind of very extreme incidences across, not only in across the country, that are we are hearing of are. I don't know if it's being reported more because of awareness or what, but it just seems to be increasing. But having said that, we have to make, I mean, there are major strides to be made, obviously, in this area, and we're nowhere close to any desired space. But if we just have to also talk about whether there have been changes in this space, I do think that increasingly I have encountered, like, for example, more and more parents, if you talk to, they are they are very inclined to ensuring that their girl goes to school. At least till grade 10, the response is at least graduation to karna chahiye. Whether or not that happens, but those responses are slowly changing. We know that there has been a growth in the enrollment data, for example, of girls going to school. It drops off post, the upper primary grades, but still, the fact that there is no difference in learning achievement as well as enrollment between girls and boys until that age group says that, okay, it indicates that we are at least moving forward in some positive way. And also that kind of points to the perception of parents wanting their girls to go to school. I think the difference comes, and Smita ji can probably shed more light on that, is that when there is a crisis in the household, then the girl's education is the first thing to be asked. Now, till that doesn't happen, we are good. But then that's where the gender inequality comes into play. When there is a problem, then it's the girl's whatever the priority is never going to be the girl. And the funny thing is that there are a lot of times when probably the girl is far more accomplished and smarter than the boy, and that can be proved with academic achievement if you compare the two. But still, it is always the girl who is going to be their education is going to be. So these are the kind of differences that you still see. Of course, violence and abuse is a separate kind of very, very important thing to speak of. But even in these, no, I wouldn't say smaller, but like more nuanced ways, these are also things that which always will have girls at a disadvantage. So these are things
So
that we
well
need
said.
to address. Yeah.
So very well
50%.
said. If I kind of just add to that a little bit, Anamara, is like going to school is certainly a basic right? But
Yeah.
what we're really battling over here is patriarchal mindsets.
Absolutely.
And even if you're increasing opportunities for women in all the spaces, what is really important is prevention. Because if we do not have an equal emphasis on prevention as we have on redressal, we'll actually just be playing catch up. We'll actually just be looking at repairing harm. Reparation is what we're going to be looking at, instead of saying, how can we have a world where we can live our realized potential without having to face or go through the cycle of violence, right?
Absolutely.
Because
Absolutely right, Smita ji. And I guess iske upar I can just say, like, we say we are celebrating Women's Equality Day, but जैसे आप दोनों ने बोला, we can really celebrate when there's equity, when there's safe space, when there's real empowerment, like Anamara said, कि जहाँ पे बोलते हैं कि बच्चों को स्कूल भेजते हैं, but क्या really वो हो रहा है? सिर्फ भेजने तक ही सिर्फ नहीं होता है, उसके आगे क्या हो रहा है, क्या वो कंटिन्यू हो रहा है कि नहीं? दैट इज व्हेन, जब ये होगा तभी ही वी कैन से लाइक वी आर रियली सेलिब्रेटिंग वुमेन्स इक्वालिटी डे.
और अगर आप पूछें कि ये क्यों भेजा जा रहा है, स्कूल भी क्यों भेजा जा रहा है, स्कूल भेजने का रीजन क्या है? इज इट बिकॉज कि आजकल शादी के लिए हमको पढ़ी लिखी लड़की चाहिए? इज दैट वन ऑफ द रीजंस व्हाई, और वेदर दिस इज द वे दैट वी आर गोइंग टू एक्चुअली सप्लीमेंट द इनकम ऑफ द हाउस, और इज इट रियली फॉर द ट्रू एम्पावरमेंट ऑफ द पर्सन, ऑफ द पर्सनहुड ऑफ द गर्ल that we're looking at, why she's being sent for? So patriarchy is actually a shapeshifter. वो बहुत जल्दी समझती जाती है कि हमको the mindset is a shapeshifter, and we really have to stay 2 steps ahead of it if you really want to address and cut off its hydra heads that we have. It's a mindset that we really need to be aware of.
No,
totally correct.
So, Smita ji, a question for you. See, when you start, it's a complicated place, right? When you're solving for this problem, it's not straightforward. But when you are unpacking that, how do you actually go to the go to the crux of the matter? You find that everything is interconnected. It's not one thing. If you fix everything, there are multiple things to address at the same time in order to even make a dent in that sense. So, but having said that, when we talk about barriers, see, like, barriers to entry are there for women. It's literally like the system has been built to keep women at a disadvantage. It's almost like that. But do you think there are 2 or 3 key areas where we talk about barriers that if we were to work on that, it would have an outsized impact on the overall situation for equity?
Let me say it like that. Like, where are these barriers coming from, and where do they live? They live in our socialization. They live in our socio-cultural norms. That is where the barriers are living, right? So if we have to actually address these barriers, then we actually need to be addressing our socio-cultural norms that are there, and the socio-cultural norms can be actually pegged into 4 pillars. There's an absolute denial that there's anything wrong. Everything is status quo as it should be. Women are doing what they need to do, men are doing what they need to do, and the world is working just fine. First of all, there's a denial. Then if there is an awareness or an understanding that there is some kind of a violation or taking away of opportunity, or there should be more opportunity, then comes in the silencing of it. Okay. And then even if people are stepping up, for example, if women are stepping up and out, and I use this in every aspect of gender-based violence that we talk about, which is from livelihood to health to food, nutrition to sexual violence, right? If you're coming in and the woman is stepping up and stepping out, she's made to feel ashamed for living out her needs or wanting to have a career or speaking up about a violation that she's endured. Shame and women go very hand in hand, that a woman who's speaking up and speaking out and wants to have maybe look after her nutrition, self-care, career, or speak up about the sexual assault or violence that she's been experiencing, any form of violence, shame becomes the second partner, second name for her. And then there's a stigma attached to that. So if you're looking at what are the barriers that we really need to be addressing and how, I think it's about unlearning the socialization that we all undergo. It really has to start from there. I was talking to somebody else and they were saying that, it's the absolute young age, 2 to 5 years of age, where your gender templates get built. That is the time when you actually need to be looking at what kind of socialization are we giving to our children, the next generation, the coming generation. That is where the barriers need to stop. The barriers need to get interrupted. And for the rest of us, they need to be broken down. Unlearning is really important. Is it making sense to you?
Oh yeah, big time. So it's funny you say that because if they say, right, that empowered women are the most inconvenient women because it's like questioning the social norm and the framework. Also, I think speaking about patriarchy, talking about the general social construct for that women grow up in. To your point you just made, I feel strongly that the self-worth of women in general, particularly in India, is very closely tied to the degree of sacrifice that they are able to make, and that is glorified, and women have somehow internalized that. So the greater the sacrifice, the greater they feel, and that is such a joke that I think patriarchy has played on women, where they have been made to believe that go, don't work and give up your job and take care of your house, even if you don't want to. If it's your choice, that's absolutely fine. But it's something that they've made them believe that it's you're supposed to do that, and you're a better person, you're a better mother. And coming to shame, if at all a woman wants to do something self-care, do something for themselves, then that the feelings of shame and guilt come up. So that's also a really sort of underhanded kind of social construct which keeps women down, and that is a barrier in a sense, right?
Absolutely, because if you look at it, if you look at, and this is very, very broad generalization and segregation that I'm doing, very broad strokes. But if you're looking at women in the rural economy, or you're looking at women in the urban economy, the rural economy, the women are working, they're doing the care economy, they're also working the farmlands, the smaller farmlands,
Yes.
right?
Yeah.
And the burden is being borne by them, and yet the man is considered to be the breadwinner.
Yeah.
Now, that is also because women could be making less money because of various factors again, right? Access to job or higher paying job, or skills for a higher paying job, or opportunities, multiple things. Children, responsibilities for the elderly, for the sick, and for the children, and the livestock falls on women mostly, right?
Yeah.
If you look at it in the urban context, it's a similar situation over there. If the women are dropping out of the glass ceiling and we say, oh, where have the women disappeared? Because there were so many women over there in STEM and STEAM, as we call it now. There's so many women over there, but where did they go? Why don't we see them in the workforce? Is because they're falling out because of, again, she is secondary to the career aspiration of the man in the house. Or getting married or having getting into the institution of marriage is considered more important than having a career of your own, right? So there are so many aspects that are actually playing, which are again based in the barriers that we're talking about of socialization, of what is the template for women and what is the template for men, and how are they supposed to be in a functional society, the dysfunctionality of the functional society.
Yeah.
And yes, the concept of sacrifice that you're talking about is again extremely deeply embedded, and it is glorified not only in a personal space but also in the familial responsibilities. They have to prioritize the needs of others, they have to care for others, they have to support the aging parents, and it's almost always at the expense of their own selves, their career, their self-care.
They also feel very good about it and proud of themselves for being like a martyrs in that sense, right? Because they are there is so much of validation they get by doing that from the immediate family, from society. So it's a very complicated relationship, I suppose, of women with doing this kind of work.
Yeah, there was a quote that once read was, the men you clip your wings for are actually the same ones who mock you for not being able to fly.
So true.
It's really a conundrum happening over here. Yes.
Yeah. Do you feel that? So you've spoken in this conversation. You've spoken very often about changing the mindset of different stakeholders within this space. So I see that as a top-down, bottom-up approach, right?
Yeah.
Generally speaking, that's slower because it takes time for perceptions to change. Do you what are your, because you've also worked on like a landmark act like POXO, so, and that is more at a policy level, right? And that can also, there have been times where bringing that policy in just completely changes the mindset of people. So what do you feel about that?
So, two things here. We didn't work directly on POXO. Sakshi, Rana Kapoor, who was the founder director of Sakshi, had filed the public interest litigation, Sakshi versus Union of India, which was on expanded definition of sexual assault and child-friendly mechanisms, which the recommendations of which have informed POXO and many other, the sexual assault bill, for example. And then again, we say that the law is as important as the practice and the access. First is the access, and then it is the practice. And then it is the interpretation. Is it coming from a gender biased lens? So there are many aspects. Just having the act or having a policy or having a framework, legal framework is not enough. What is important is the practice of it. What is important is the access to it. What is important is the interpretation of it. Who's interpreting it? What are the lenses that they're wearing? And we again just come back again and again to the absolute root causes of what we call the patriarchal mindset. That is exactly where it all begins. And that is where we really need to be focusing all our energy in. And so I just want to flag out over here that Sakshi is running the Rakshin project, which you spoke about earlier. And Dr. Ramya Nisar is the program director now. I initiated it. And now Dr. Ramya Nisar is leading it very powerfully across the country. We are just focusing on the root causes over there, working with the college students, working with the youth, and working on read the root causes in your everyday life. What are the root causes that actually, what is it that you're practicing on your everyday? Can you read the sexism that you're practicing? Can you read the misogynist comments that you're doing? Can you read the films that you're watching? And can you actually interpret it through the lens of a gender just world? How is it that what are the actions that you can take to practice everyday equality? It's as simple as that. And it could be something as simple as the boy saying, मैं आज से घूरूंगा नहीं किसी को, या मुझे नहीं पता था कि सीटी मारने से यार इतनी तबाही मचती है, अब मैं सीटी नहीं मारूंगा किसी लड़की के पीछे. It's as simple as that. And as simple as them understanding that it is not their position to allow a person to do something. What gives them the right or the power to allow a woman to do something? Just changing that language from allow to each one of us has a right to live as citizens and access those opportunities. Simple acts, simple words, simple nuances, which are important at this point of time.
Absolutely. I think that this is where life skills comes in,
Yes.
and
Yes.
at the right time.
Yes.
You're aware, Smita ji, that Empower India runs a program which focuses on life skills. It's called Setu, and we start with when children enter adolescence, mainly because the idea being that that's when the sense of self really develops. They are exploring the surroundings around them. It's the first time they are more aware of their own gender, that they are female. So many changes happening, and so the thing is that when you talk about life skills, there are plenty. There are socio-emotional life skills. There is more critical thinking, problem solving, decision making, etc. But I think at the crux of it, it is really about a child being able to empowering a child, building their agency to be able to, for them to realize that it's okay to have some clear boundaries.
Yes.
And specifically for women and girls, it's okay to say no when you are uncomfortable. Obviously, recognizing dangerous situations, that's a huge part of it. But I think the confidence to be able to clearly articulate and say, I don't like this, or I don't like the way you're looking at me, or I don't like the fact that you're standing too close to me, recognizing that. So I feel like there is so much, and if we are able to give those girls that, there is so much power in that. It kind of
absolutely
sort of translates and percolates in other areas of their lives as well, because once they have that confidence to say, I'm worth it and I can say no because I don't like it, there is a lot of power in that. And that's what we want. I think part of that is being able to teach the girls how to do that.
Excellent, Anamara. And what we also emphasize is that we need to teach this to boys and girls.
Yes.
Because it's 53% boys and 37% girls who undergo violation. Yeah. So it's as important for boys to know this as it is for girls. And then again, while it is important for the children and the girls and the adolescents to know this, the actual onus of accountability lies on the adults. Because it is for us to create that safe, secure environment, for our youth, for our children, and not put the burden of it completely just on them. That is the ecology-based model that we should be actually, because that is the prevention that we are looking at. So we are taking accountability. We are saying, okay, we are watching out. Nothing can escape our radar. We know what to look out for, and we are going to be responsible and accountable to create this environment so that the youth can live out their potential and the children can live out their childhood.
Yeah,
that I think becomes, and what you said is just so critical, like just being able to understand personal boundaries, my personal autonomy, my sense of my being able to say no. We run a very simple exercise, Anamara. It's the power of no, and we just make them say no louder and louder and louder and louder and louder, and go as loud as you possibly can. And the liberation that happens over there, I'm sure you have experienced it, we have experienced it. I think all of us need to experience it and try it out, because just the liberation of being able to say the word no in a culture which teaches us to say yes under any circumstances is really important. It's really critical.
Absolutely. Yeah. No, I 100% agree. And I think teaching these skills to girls is only part of the solution, as you said. Sending an empowered girl into a disempowering environment, household, is going to defeat the purpose. So it's important to all the decision makers in a young girl's life need to be also made aware of how they can be supported and create that ecosystem for the girl to be able to thrive in.
Yeah, it has to be an integrated approach. It definitely, certainly has to be an integrated approach. And some of the skills that we say are very good for workplaces and leaderships and emotional competencies, I think those are actually part of the life skills that we are talking about over here. And one of them really is about conflict resolution. How do you de-escalate a conflict? What kind of negotiations can happen, which are not positions? How do you soften up positions which are interest-based? How do you have a dialogue? What is the equation of a conversation which is a dialogue where there's an equal listening and equal speaking opportunity happening for everybody who's engaged in that conversation? So all of these life skills that we talk about and we reserve for corporate leadership programs are, I think, something that should be happening at grassroots level in every household. Whether it's with boys or girls or adults, all of us.
So it's important for our program to do that. So, like you said about time management, about decision making, about negotiation, about recognizing unhealthy relationships, listening, assertiveness. It's not only for the professional domain. These skills need to be learned when you're much younger. So absolutely, I completely agree with you on that.
Yes.
So, Disha, you want anything? You want to?
Yes, I like after hearing the conversation, एक है कि like Smita ji, you said कि it's not the duty or maybe the role of like just say the policy maker or the educators or so. So it's a collective initiative जिससे ये चीज हम पूरा कर सकते हैं. तो आप क्या मैसेज दे सकते हैं like to both of you, but starting with you, Smita ji, what message would you like to give to maybe the general audiences or the public regarding the importance of, like we say, life skills? So why is it importance, and in context of promoting gender or women's equality?
So मैसेज जैसी चीज तो बहुत बड़ी चीज हो जाती है, बट ये कहना चाहूंगी, I'd like to start with saying कि हम लोग अगर अपनी एजेंसी एक्सरसाइज करना शुरू करते हैं ना, बिना डरे, बिना खौफ के, है ना, और ये हम लोग मानना शुरू कर ले कि हमारी भी आवाज है, हम इस देश की इकाई है, हमारी भी आवाज है ना, क्योंकि हमें सिखाया गया फॉर सेंचुरीज, हमें सिखाया गया चुप रहो, और हमें सिखाया गया कि we are trapped in relationships, we have relational identities, है ना, we very rarely find a woman having an individual identity, right? Identity as an individual is not valorized. It is something which is considered antagonistic, right? हमारी relational identity को बहुत महत्व दिया जाता है, उसको valorize किया जाता है. So if we can actually also start looking at ourselves as citizens of this country, इसके लिए ना मैं एक बहुत मेरी एक छोटी सी poem है, अगर मैं उसको आप permission दे तो I would just like to recite that for you, if that is all right.
Yes, of course. Okay. Yes, of course. Please do.
So, दादी, नानी, चाची, ताई, बुआ, मौसी, बहन, बेटी या ननद बनने के पहले मैं औरत हूँ, देश की आधी इकाई, निर्भीक, निडर, निश्चय है, न घर की चार दीवारी में कोई मुझ पे हाथ उठा पाएगा, ना कोख में हाथ डाल मुझे जिंदा दफनाएगा, ना ही राह चलते गला घोट चीर हरण कर कोई आग लगा जाएगा। खुली हवा में आर्थिक स्वावलंबन की ओर जुड़कर चलना मैं सिखाऊंगी। महत्वाकांक्षाओं का सारथी बन सूरज का 7वां घोड़ा मैं दौड़ाऊंगी। छोटी बड़ी उपलब्धि की चोटी पे गर्व से ध्वज मैं फहराऊंगी। डर, हिंसा, घातक हमलों की सरहद के परे आजादी की परिभाषा इस पीढ़ी को मैं पढ़ाऊंगी। परिवार की ताकत, देश की गरिमा हूं, मैं औरत हूं, नागरिक हूं, देश की आधी इकाई।
Incredible. So powerful. Oh, yeah. I mean, that couldn't have been a better sort of culmination of this conversation. Wow.
I am actually at loss of words.
Yeah.
But ये जितनी औरतें ये सुनेंगी उसी से उनको पता चलेगा कि उन्होंने करना क्या है. Rather than like you said giving a message एक बहुत बड़ी चीज होती है. But through this I could call it art. Through this art is through what women would know or young girls जो ये देख रहे होंगे उनको पता चलेगा कि क्या करना है. What does equality like we talk about? What it means. Beautiful, Smita ji. Thank you so much. Anamara, in
Should I really
your-
follow up? I mean, what
No.
can I follow post that? You just don't put me in that position. No, I just jokes apart. I just want to say that no message again as such, but I feel like the boys play a very big role in this. I mean, without the support of boys, since we are talking about, or I am talking about adolescent girls, we are not going to be able to make a dent. We at this moment, it's a very misguided sense of the way we look at say security of a girl, for example. आप 8 बजे के बाद घर नहीं जाओ, बेचारी लड़की ने क्या किया जिसकी वजह से उसको घर में बिठा रहे हैं, प्रॉब्लम कहीं और है. आप लड़कों को नहीं बोलते हो कि घर में बैठो, बिकॉज या आप जो भी लड़कियों को छेड़ो मत या कुछ, it is the burden still again lies on the woman, even though she's not the problem, right? So those are the things that we need to change, right? So I think it is the boys that we need to make part of the solution for this to really change. So that's the only thing that I would have to say as a
Absolutely. I think it's a very, very powerful message, Anamara, because without having men and boys as allies, I do not think we can create an integrated ecosystem.
We need the buy-in, otherwise it's not going to happen.
Absolutely. I completely endorse that. Yes.
एंड मैं एक और चीज ऐड करना चाहूंगी इस पे, या फिर एक चीज और पूछना चाहूंगी आप दोनों से कि could you share like one maybe experience or story, because you both run such powerful organizations. So have you seen with such practices, through such exercises, have you both seen like any change or any story that you would like to share today with us, with the young girls who are watching or the women who are watching these live? So maybe like a small story that you have come across during your organization or any of the exercises.
Sure. Anamara, you want to go first?
Sure, happy to. It's not one story. There are actually, it is a story of many women, right? So when we started, you know, we work in very, very rural villages. When we started off this Setu program, it was for young girls. But we also hired young women to teach these young girls from the villages themselves. These these women have had, or rather girls, they're 20-year-old girls, 22-year-old girls who had never really stepped out of their home as such. They were, simple girls who had studied till 10th, 12th, working in villages, etc. We said, no, we will train you, and you train the girls in your villages. That's how we started. Now, these girls, they just needed an opportunity, and somebody to say, you can do it. We are behind you. These girls, each of them who had never stepped out of their homes, now have their own bikes, bought on their own, zipping across these villages, and having the sense of empowerment, which is it's very hard to explain. So the reason I'm saying this is that girls just need a small opportunity and
Yes.
and just somebody to say, you're worth it, you can do it, just go for it, we are behind you. And there is like such a transformation, it's unbelievable. So I just feel like this is what motivates me every day to do it, because I know change is possible with very little intervention. It is possible, and these girls are showing it on a daily basis. So yeah.
Brilliant. Absolutely brilliant. So encouraging, the stories. So I'd like to share, again, like I said, so many stories, but one that particularly stands out for me always is we run the Rakshan project, which is about interrupting the cycle of sexual violence, right? And we go around and we frame our conversation under the constitutional right to equality. Okay, we encourage self-reflection over there. We encourage the exercising of your agency, about practicing empathy, about practicing do no harm. Like, there's no excuses for doing harm. Like, I didn't know, I wasn't informed, what can I do? We talk about community accountability over there, and we steer away from victim blaming, because we don't focus just on the victims and the survivors, because then the tendency is to just make it about victim blaming kind of a thing. So in that context, one of these girls at the end of the session stood up and she said, Smita, and this is, I'm talking about a very conservative geography, in a very conservative background. This girl, she stood up and she said, Smita, it's for the first time I realized that my sense of shame was actually violating the constitutional right to equality for myself and my sister. I said, I'm sorry, I don't understand. Could you just tell me a little more? And she said, and this is like in the full workshop, there's all of us are there. And she says, because I've been so ashamed to use the rights-based language where sexual violation is concerned, I could not articulate those words. So I would keep quiet for myself and for my sister, and I would let it continue. So my own sense of shame was violating my constitutional right to equality. And that brings us back to what is it that we keep talking about. This again, this 4-5 lines that we have, it say, किसी कवि ने कहा था कि जहाँ सर उठा के चलो, जहाँ डर की परछाई भी ना हो, ऐसे देश में मेरा वास हो, क्योंकि मैं नागरिक हूँ, सुरक्षित हूँ, निडर बेखौफ जीवन मेरा संवैधानिक अधिकार है. It's my constitutional right to live a fearless life. And that I think is the work that we all need to be doing, and that can only be possible if we are doing it through gender responsive governance. That's the only way something like this is possible. It has to be bottom up, but it also has to be top down. It has to, somewhere the twain has to meet.
So correct, and I think this is a great takeaway or a thought that our audiences could take from this life, especially. So thank you so much, Smitaji. And as we come to the end of the conversation, I would like you both to tell our audiences or to the broader community on how they could support the two organizations. So, if you could just take that, Smitaji, starting with you.
I would say active citizenship. Active citizenship, it is about how is it that we can, each one of us, get empowered and a single focus to create safe spaces. How can we, each one of us, shift our attitudes, unlearn for a safer today and a safer tomorrow, and look for a sustainable solution, sustainable action for preventing sexual violence. And that can only be possible if we build a culture of accountability. And for that, each one of us has to commit to building and creating safe spaces, one home at a time. Don't look far. Just look inside your own homes and say, how is it that I can make my home a safe space, free of any form of sexual violence to begin with, and free of gender-based violence? How can I practice everyday equality every single day, every single minute?
Anamara?
Yeah, I have a similar sort of thought process to Smitaji. I think there are plenty of opportunities if you really go and seek it. Whether there are plenty of non-profits where you can, if you want, you can go and support. But just if each one of us at a very individual, personal level, we decide that the girls, I'm just biased to girls, so sorry. The girls in my community, or perhaps the staff that I may have, they have children, sisters. If I am able to ensure that those girls are educated, I take that extra effort to make sure they have a direction, whether it's a career path, completing their education. I feel even if you're able to contribute to that, it is a huge win, because once a girl is educated, there is certain level of empowerment that comes with that. Knowledge can never be taken. You can take everything else. That knowledge that you have is not going to go anywhere. So just support the education of girls around you, and that itself is a huge thing that you can.
So brilliant, because if you bring education together with safe environment, what more? What can be the barrier to prevent, to realize the full potential? What barrier can be there to prevent growth and equity?
Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Smita ji and Anamara, for sharing your valuable insights and your thoughts at this live. And as we conclude this live, I want to remind everyone who is watching the live right now that the journey towards gender equality is still ongoing. Like I said previously, we can really say we are celebrating these days if we actually have the freedom, if we have equity, if we have the freedom to choose, if women have or girls have the freedom to choose, to live, to practice their rights, is when we could really say like we are celebrating these days. So, and it requires the collective efforts of everyone, say for policy makers or educators or the community and organizations like Sakshi and empowHER is when we can really reach to the mark that we want to reach. And so if you are anyone from the different levels, you like policymaker or educator, and simply believe that education has the power and it is the power, and you have the role to really help us in reaching this goal. And so I encourage all of the audiences, all of the people watching, all the girls, all the women on this day to get involved with such organizations, Sakshi and empowHER. So support the initiatives and advocate each and every one surrounded by you and in surrounding of on helping us reach that goal. So thank you again, Smita ji and Anamara. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, and thank you, Smita ji. It was an absolute pleasure talking to you. I've learned a lot just by this conversation. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Anamara. Thank you, Disha. I honestly have this has been a very enriching conversation, and I can see so much synergy between us as well going forward, and I look forward to that.
Likewise. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. To our audiences, as we end the live, you'll be able to follow Smita ji, Anamara, and the organizations. You'll have the details in the description of the video. And if you have any questions, you could just comment below and we'll get back to you. Thank you so much and take care. Happy Women's Equality Day.
Bye.